not communicating the cadence and the culture up front are two things that end up turning candidates who seem good in the interview process to candidates who don't work out when they actually join the organization.
Today we are going to discuss the AI hiring risks that don't show until month 3. A lot of AI hiring advice stop at the interview. The risks that cost you the most do not. They wait. They surface in a month 3, when a remote hire still has no shift, when a quiet yes turns out to mean no, when the role you wrote does not match the work you needed. Today, 5 of those risks and how do they risk each of them before day 1. So, which AI hiring risks only surface after someone starts?
Yeah, so a few of them. One would be the ability to deliver in production. The challenge today is that people can simply use AI in their interview process to speak very eloquently about quote unquote experiences building with AI or building AI. And so there is a real necessity to dig deeper in their experience and find out what did you actually do in that build process, not the royal we, which commonly used in interviews, but really getting deep into what you or the candidate actually did. And so understanding the storyline behind what they built becomes more important than understanding the specific skill sets that they have. The other thing I'll point out related to why things go wrong is miscommunication around your company's work cadence. And so, for all the flack that the startups who pitch 996, right? 996 is 9 a.m. to 9 p.m. for 6 days a week, right? And so there are many startups that pitch that, but if they're honest up front about it, the candidate can opt in to that versus trying to pitch a fluffy 40-hour work week when in reality it requires a lot more work. That usually creates cadence issues with the talent, and it works the other way. There are people who absolutely want to be deep into the weeds with the company and working that 996 cadence because presumably they're working on something that is game changing. That's why they would do it. And so not communicating the cadence and the culture up front are two things that end up turning candidates who seem good in the interview process to candidates who don't work out when they actually join the organization.
What cross-border risks blindsides first-time remote teams?
I think the main thing is communication. For folks who move to remote, if you've always had an in-office culture, conversations happen and they can happen sporadically, and that's okay. But I think when you have a remote team, you have to be very intentional about communication. You have to be very intentional about establishing what the culture is of the organization. And so that communication cadence plays a lot into whether the talent on the team actually feels like a team or actually feels like someone who's more of a contractor and just hops in on the project when asked, right? So the communication around it all ends up becoming the biggest factor as we think about nearshore talent, as we think about remote work in general.
Why is hiring too late an underrated risk?
We're moving at the speed of light, right? I think that's the biggest risk. If we think about hiring too early, the risk is obvious, right? You're burning cash on someone who you don't have the right setup for. But hiring too late, you think about how innovative this AI space is, how the funding cycles work, how, being the first to market with your product and that product is game changing, how much that impacts your reputation in the market, your marketing presence, and being able to develop and keep pace with the rate of change in AI today is critical. And so if you hire too late, you're not going to have the talent necessary to enable you to maintain pace with what's happening. And you really need people who are forward thinking. Those people aren't easy to find. We're talking about someone who both has the ability to produce AI products in a production environment. But add to that the insight, or I should say the intellectual curiosity that's going to push them to find out what the latest and greatest technology is out there on their own, right? What's the state of the art? They should have a perspective on that so that they can bring that into your organization and apply that to their creation process.
How does a fuzzy role definition turns into a bad hire?
Yeah, so I think we have to get beyond AI just being a general technology, right? We have to really focus on what the role, the person, the individual needs to be able to do, right? So a machine learning engineer is different from a data scientist, is different from a data engineer. And then it goes beyond that. There's domain expertise. So someone who has knowledge of finance workflows and has a skill set around data science, that person looks different than, let's say, someone who's a general, let's call it general data scientist. So we have to think about what skill set this person needs. And I know it sounds like you're narrowing yourself to a niche skill set in the market. Niching down actually helps us to find that person who has the skill set that is needed to deliver. And so the importance of it becomes, if we think about how AI is impacting workflows, well, the gap that everyone is trying to solve now is not how you build an LLM, right? Most people aren't trying to solve that. The majority of people are trying to take Gen AI and apply it to a business problem. And most folks who come from an engineering organization don't have that domain expertise to do that, but there are folks who do. So the challenge is to define the role specific enough so that you can add that to the job description and look for those people who, in the example I use, have both an engineering skill set with exposure to finance.
Okay. What actually directs an AI hire before day one?
Yeah, it's the planning ahead. And I know it's a challenge because most folks are hiring because they're capacity constrained. But you do yourself a lot of good if you define what the person you need to hire, the talent you need to hire, what they should be able to accomplish in the first 90 days. Having the laptop set up, having the data that they need to use ready, having their intro to the organization ready. Not that you're going to have them pedal to the metal from day one, but having those things set up sets that person up for success. It gives them the organizational knowledge that they need to get started, to locate themselves, to understand where everything is that they need to get ready. It allows them to have regular meeting cadences with people who are informing what they need to accomplish in the first 90 days. And it gives them some sense of roadmap, what they need to accomplish. So in the first 90 days, the vast majority of talent, except for some bad actors, that's the most motivated that they're going to be when they come into the organization. So the more detailed the roadmap and the access to materials and knowledge from other teammates have been established, the better they are and the greater probability of success they're going to have in the role.
Before your next AI hire, run these 5 risks against your own setups and count how many you have a plan for. If you want help closing the cross-border ones especially, the link in the description starts a feed call. Which of these 5 has caused you the most? Tell us in the comments.